See, come on, Jamon. All right. It looks like we're feeding out to the folks out there. While I'm waiting for confirmation of all that, make sure you guys can hear us loud and clear. I know my video looks kind of weird. Of course, I'm going to ask you guys to go to hankstrange.com, sign up for the email list. Very important thing to do. That's a great way to support us. You can communicate with us. We can communicate with you. There are Lola posts deals on there if you look under Lola's deals, as well as we have a merchandise tab where you can get patches. So we've got this is the broadcast. We got the blaster patch up there, as well as the 2020 was hell in a handbasket patch that you can get from there. And if you pick up any of the patches right now, Lola's throwing some stickers in there, or you can get these stickers. This is the Hank Strange grenade logo sticker that I'm showing. So hankstrange.com, that's the place to go. Let me load up my guests in here. We will be having Rob McNeely of TUSC joining us. He's I don't see him yet, so he'll probably be coming on here in a few minutes once he gets everything set up. Let me just smash the open and get going on this.
Welcome back to the Hank Strange Situation.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Smash the subscribe button, smash the thumbs ups, ring the bell so you can be notified every time we go live. I believe everyone here has done this before. We got to do jazz hands to get this started. There you go. Jazz hands are going. We are live. I hope you guys have your big girl panties on. This is episode 717 of the Who Moved My Freedom podcast. And the title tonight is Can Crypto Help Us? So we hopefully have Rob McNeely of TUSC joining us later. We also have Alex of CTRL+PEW. There he goes. Alex, what's up, man?
Not a lot, dude. Hanging out, living the dream.
Awesome. Great to have you back, man. Appreciate that,
Good to be back.
Yeah, especially, with the new status, you're showing up on Tim Pool. Joe Rogan is next. Joe Rogan is next.
Gotta be on Joe's next.
Yeah, we're gonna make that.
Gonna do some DMT. We're gonna.
Oh boy. No. My advice to you is anything that Joe Rogan pushes across that table,
right?
You politely push it back, sir.
I'll go with it, except for whiskey and coffee. That's 2 lines right there.
Oh, okay. What was that, Mark?
I was going to go completely the opposite. Anything he pushes, I say you go ahead with it. It's fine. No worries.
Okay. Well, yeah, that you could go that route too. Also joining us is my friend Mark. I call him Beard Almighty. I don't know what he's going by now, but we've been buddies for a long time. He was here last when we did the election stuff, I believe, right, Mark?
That's correct.
Yes, and he's joining us because I know nothing about crypto. So I know Alex does, and Mark, of course, you're into crypto along with the many other interests that you have. So Mark is joining us here to ask the tough questions. That's, hopefully, Mark.
We'll see.
Yeah, yes. So while we're waiting for Rob to come on, we've got CTRL+PEW here. You're in the realm of 3D printing stuff. If folks out there have questions, it's a good time to let us know. Mark, have you gotten into any 3D printing of anything yet?
I have one that I bought, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been fantastic. It's one of the ones that's made in Korea. I really like it. It's a very small platform, and I've just done basically what 90% of us is just tinker around and, play around with it. And that's about it. But I have a high interest in it. I've been monitoring it, looking at the changes, watching the different, the additive and the different ways. And I really think if it hasn't really kind of gone over the edge, I don't think it's very far from doing that. And I can't wait to hear what Alex has to say about where the technology is going, not only just how it affects, I see this, just not only how it affects the 2A industry, but sort of just our lives in general.
Yeah, good question, Alex. You want to take that?
God, that was a heavy one to hit me with right out of the gate. Fixing the 2A industry, good Lord. For starters, it makes everyone an advocate, right? If you're making this at home, I hope you have a better understanding of like what guns are for and how they're, how to I guess, better utilize them, and what's actually involved. Like when I find new things, I get exposed to them more. I start to understand like the engineering background behind them and the physics involved in how they operate. I'm very like mechanically oriented. So for me, this helps me understand, this helped me understand, I guess not really, but it's an extension of like what the gun physically is. And I don't know, it helps me sort of come to terms with and sort of combat the whole like the mythical sort of lore that the anti-gun lobby starts to push over it. These things make you think weird things. They think about all mental health stuff, and yeah, it's a physical object, and I hope that people, if they start building, will understand that better. Hopefully that was coherent. Got me off guard.
I mean, well, you know what? I kind of we'll let Mark get into it here. I think that when you do start making anything, right? Anything that you're getting into, if you actually get your hands dirty making it, if it's cars, guns, anything out there, once you get into it, you get your hands dirty, you have a better understanding. That's the part that I got. What about you, Mark?
Well, I think that this is just an extension of what we see when people that are in opposition to assault rifles go and shoot. How many times have we seen mainstream media members go and shoot, and all of a sudden there's a smile on their face, and they're kind of embarrassed that there's a smile on their face, right? But we can go back to all these people that Ted Nugent has taken out shooting, and even like Joe Rogan and some of these other people that have taken. All of a sudden, they're not as scared of it. Oh, well, this isn't this big scary thing. And so I think this is just an extension of that at a much deeper level. I mean, you go from operating it, which you have a basic understanding once someone walks you through the safety rules and, that kind of thing. But now all of a sudden you're building it. I had not thought of that. And I think that is such an excellent approach to this, because it's better than even getting them involved in shooting. Getting them involved in this process is much deeper. I really like it. I got to go. I'm going to fire mine up.
Yeah, I'm hanging in here with you guys. I'm just trying to get Rob on, so you guys keep going here for a second. I don't know whose turn it was, but
well, I mean, I'll throw some questions out.
Yeah, hit me with whatever you got.
So, and I'm sure you've talked about this ad nauseum, maybe but for me and maybe some of the viewers that haven't heard it, how have you seen things change? So obviously 2015, 2016, when it started to get a little more traction, a little popular, but they were $2,000. Now you can buy one of the large machines for much less than that. They're much more dependable. What do you see? I'm interested as what you see as the next step. We can all kind of see that there's the DLP laser systems versus the purely additive systems. What do you see 3, 4, 5 years down the road that will make this even more for the masses, easier, quicker, cheaper, more dependable, that kind of thing?
I mean, the beautiful thing about this is it's not like we're not a company in the industry driving technology. There are 1,000 other companies driving technology forward, and that aren't even us and aren't interested in firearms one way or the other. So right now we're looking at better, cheaper printers. So we're looking at, something about like the Ender 5 I have back here for the same kind of money, but better features and larger. So a larger machine, metal hot ends, stuff that can print more durable material faster and more consistently, and then better and better material sciences. I don't know that we're going to get to metal printing in the next 5 to 10 years at the consumer level. That's got a long way to go before it becomes accessible to someone doing it in their living room. But
I want to break in real quick here on that. Is that a function of the fact that the makers of these know that the wallets are much deeper? They can sell one metal printing machine to Ford for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Why would they even think about moving the technology downstream to the end consumer for such a small purchase amount? Do you think that plays into it, or is it a technology issue?
I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but it really, like, the core of it really is a technology issue, because the way the SLS printing, the metal laser printing works, is you deposit a powder of metal, basically dust particles, and you heat up the chamber that it's in to just below that particle melting point, and then you hit it with a laser to move it over that line in that specific area, and it melts that layer, and then you do it again and you repeat, and the layers all fuse together, sort of. There's still they're not, it's not one cohesive piece, it's a bunch of little balls that are stuck together. So we have, this is bad for okay, and then once all that's done, you have to send that part off to, I guess I would almost describe it as like a casting facility, where they're going to take that part, they're going to make a mold, and then they're going to like fill the mold with additional material. So it almost becomes okay, so that right there is one of the reasons, the primary drivers why you can't do it in your living room, is you have to send it off to another, like a furnace, and it's got to become a whole, you need a facility to do it. It's a multiple step process, whereas your FDM printers are just, you hit the button and then it comes off. And then another part of that is the actual material cost to get, the powder is not very cheap, and then you have to fill your chamber with inert gases, and it's also not very cheap, and then you have to build a containment unit to hold all of that together at temperature for a while, and that's one more level of not cheap. So it's got a ways to go. It is a technology problem.
So
And
what does a unit like that cost? If someone was completely dedicated to this, like yourself, I'm sure you have an interest in having one of those. What would that cost you? I mean, if you're just going to go buy an entry-level machine like that to use.
Ballpark is $50,000 to $100,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, we got Rob on finally.
Hello.
Hey, Rob. What's up, man?
Well, it was the damnedest thing. Besides, I hate Microsoft products and I hate Skype. I just logged into Skype, and apparently I have 2 Skype accounts. I guess so. I logged me into my not normal one, so that's where I was, and I'm like, "Where is everybody?" So, how you doing, guys?
No, it's cool. We got you here.
From Microsoft saying you're not allowed to have 2 accounts. They'll cancel both of them and ban you for life.
Yeah.
You know what? I've already been canceled and deplatformed enough, so I just expected at this point. That's just where eventually my life will fade out to being deplatformed. That's how I just expect to go.
Yeah, someone just needs to make deplatform.com, and then we'll all wind up over there, and that'll be the cool kids' place. Where everyone actually is. Yes. So we've got Rob here. We've got CTRL+PEW. Mark and Alex were actually deep in a conversation, which I was kind of not following, really, because obviously we're trying to get everyone on here. But thanks for keeping the show going, guys. And what I would ask is for everyone out there to smash the thumbs ups, ring the bell. Of course, I want to let everyone know that we are sponsored by TUSC. Rob is here representing TUSC as a cryptocurrency payment for the firearms industry. So they do sponsor us, full disclosure to everyone out there. And, just bear that in mind as we have this conversation. I think it's great that we've got Alex and we've got Mark, because maybe they can come up with some questions for you, Rob, some tough questions for the folks out there. I'm sure a lot of the audience out there, maybe we can ask people that. Who knows about cryptocurrency? Who understands cryptocurrency out there? If you do, let us know now. Show your hands. If you notice, my hands are not going up. So
we're working on you, dude.
Yes.
We're working on you.
Yeah, exactly. But if you guys don't know, this is a great opportunity, I feel like, to get into this. Alex, you were saying that you're involved in cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah, we dabble a little bit in the community. So a lot of our community focuses around decentralization of all things. Firearms manufacturing becomes a part of that, and along with that, you have decentralization of your money, which Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies do pretty well. our community dove heavy into it during our time on Keybase. We were getting stellar lumen drops, airdrops while we were there, because we had, they were doing a thing where you just had an account and you got this cryptocurrency drop, and a lot of people would donate that money to developers to fund projects. So it was an interesting time, to say the least, given how the whole Keybase thing shook out in the end.
I still have my Lumen. I still have my Lumen airdrop from that.
Nice. Yeah, they funded quite a bit of our development, and it sort of put us in the crypto space more heavily as developers. I personally run a Bitcoin BTC Pay server node, and I accept Bitcoin payments in my shop, and I run a donation portal for developers to accept Bitcoin directly. Okay. So, yeah, that's my exposure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Good exposure.
Yeah, that's good stuff to know. Mark, do you want to, where would you put your interest in Bitcoin at?
I first got interested in it back in 2011, 2012 time frame. I went in and out of it a couple of times. I was kind of involved in it in the Mt. Gox, and anyone that's familiar with crypto will kind of know that fiasco and disaster. Luckily, I wasn't one of the ones that had millions of dollars that was lost. So I was fortunate there. And then I stepped away from it for a bit, and I got back involved in it in 16, 17 a little bit, and have kind of been involved in it from a layperson's perspective. I'm not involved in any projects. I don't have a business that accepts it, nothing like that at all. But just from a layperson, decentralized, self-banking kind of scenario. And from that perspective, I'd kind of like to get Rob's 60-second elevator pitch on TUSC so I can sort of hear it from the elephant's mouth, so to speak.
I like the elephant. Straight up, I always like to preface these conversations is that I love Bitcoin. I'm a big Bitcoin investor. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bitcoin, and we're not competing with Bitcoin. So I always like to throw that out there, because a lot of people, even in the 3D printed gun space, there's a lot of Bitcoin, what we call Bitcoin maximalists, that just like Bitcoin and they hate on everything else. And I hope it doesn't delve into one of those arguments, because it's just those things have been hashed to death. So essentially, we decided over 3 years ago now, we started and launched our project originally, and essentially we decided to be Bitcoin for guns. Now that encompasses a whole lot. It's kind of a loaded statement, but essentially there are a lot of differences to what Bitcoin is and what we're doing. We are a non-ICO community, community-driven open source project. We never sold tokens, never sold coins. We've been in a pilot for about 6 months, and we're about to go full launch after our payment gateways are completed, and those are being worked on right now. But I think that one of the key differences is that we purpose-built TUSC and our blockchain with the gun retailer in mind. So we're focused on lawful gun retailers. We made it with a different blockchain than Bitcoin, so it's faster than Bitcoin, it's cheaper than Bitcoin. The pricing for transactions are always consistent. So retailers always know what it's going to cost to transact with TUSC. But one of the big things that's different in what we're doing probably than any other cryptocurrency is we asked the question, and we think we solved it, is how do you market a decentralized cryptocurrency to get adoption, but market it like a startup? And to that end, and what we came up with is that we created this thing called the marketing partner, that is a term limited and elected vendor to the TUSC decentralized blockchain that gets a small sliver of block rewards, and its job is to use that for marketing to grow TUSC. And part of that is doing just sales. Unlike a lot of cryptocurrency projects, we spend more time going to gun-related events like SHOT Show, Firearms Policy Coalition, NRA Convention, and we're the only crypto project there. There's no one from Bitcoin there. There's no one from the Lightning Network there, and we believe and I still believe this to this day, that the main reason nobody's using crypto for money, because no one is, not even with Bitcoin. There's some technological reasons why. But the other thing is that people want to buy from people they know, like, and trust. And ultimately, we believe that to close the last mile of crypto adoption, which no cryptocurrency is done yet, it's going to require handholding. It's going to require actual customer support. It's going to require marketing to get people to actually spend crypto. Right now, Bitcoin is a store of value. It's an amazing project, but it's a store of value, and it's really not designed and not really being utilized very well as a payment system. And, when Bitcoin goes up 10 grand like it did the other day, why in God would you waste it on buying coffee? And it doesn't make sense, in our opinion, for a deflationary asset to be used for payments. And so I can unpack any of that, and I'm not here to cause a fight. We're a very different project than what Bitcoin is, because our focus has always just been on getting people to use and adopt cryptocurrency, because it doesn't matter how great the technology is if no one uses it.
So can I jump in here real quick with a question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So I see what you're saying with something with the volatility of Bitcoin. Why would you want to turn your Bitcoin in for, let's stick with the firearms industry rather than the cup of coffee, since that's kind of what we're all here talking about. Why would you buy a Glock today when Bitcoin could go up 30% tomorrow and you could have bought a Glock and a couple extra magazines? Right, I get that 100%. So I'm on board with that. My question to you would be, how are you going to handle the early adopters with the limited daily volume that you have currently? What's the roadmap? So if I'm a vendor, I'm hankstrangegunshop.com, and a guy comes in, I want him to use TUSC for whatever reason because I can't get the proper payment processing through Visa, Bank of America, all of the things we all know about. I can't have him buy even something as simple as a $400 Glock with TUSC today, right? Because the limited volume that you have, a $400 purchase would be the highest daily volume so far this year. So the change in price because of
you're confusing. One, that's not true.
Okay.
We've actually had over $3,000 worth of body armor purchased this year. That's not done through an exchange. That's on chain. And that's not measured on daily volume, measured on an exchange or a tracker like CoinMarketCap. So on-chain volume is not calculated or tallied by CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. So you're talking about trade volume on exchange, which is different than on-chain sales. So I just want to clarify that.
Right, and I'm completely aware of that. However, the guy that sold the body armor, he must still be holding the TUSC, correct?
For now, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at some point, he's going to have to go to a marketplace through an exchange in order to convert that, whether it's fiat, USDT, USDC, Bitcoin, whatever he decides, in order to use that to pay his rent, to pay the invoice for if he was, not the manufacturer of the body armor. So that's my question. I understand the on-chain argument. But once again, if I'm hankstrangeguns.com and I want to, and I'm not trying to be defensive, I really want to know what your roadmap, what your plan is to overcome the early shops that pull this on, that can't turn the TUSC into something that they can use in their daily to pay Davidsons for the gun that they just sold when they want to buy another.
Sure. So two things. One, our volume has definitely been fluctuated, but we don't have payment gateways yet. So part of the problem is we have a list of retailers that want to use it right now, but can't because we just don't have the payment gateways out yet. It's baby steps like everything else. If you do look at our volume, though, from most of November, December, we had volume in the thousands every day, upwards to 15,000. So our volume has gone up and down depending on what's going on. So how do you get people excited about a project and want to invest in other words, increase that daily trade volume? It's marketing. And so one of the things that we're doing right now is, we're just started sponsoring several podcasts. Currently, the Bronson and Corbin Kaufusi, which are two NFL players that are working with us, they're helping us do recruiting more influencers to come on board. So we're in the last week alone, we are talking to 3 very prominent other additional influencers that we're going to get on board and look at sponsoring and working on things. I'm fielding calls from retailers all over the country right now, almost on a daily basis, of people that are waiting for payment gateways because they do want to use it. And most of the early, now, I don't try to bullshit people, right? I say, look, you're probably not going to get sales for a while if you do, and two, you're probably going to have to hold the TUSC for a while until we get more liquid. So we're very open and transparent that this is a process, and there are things that have to fall in line. Where does it start? Well, it starts here, and it starts with the marketing, and we have a lot of marketing that's going to be rolling out. So, for instance, another gun builder out of, I keep forgetting what state, it's either Mississippi or Alabama, one of those down south states, is going to be building some giveaway rifles for us at our TUSC theme, and we're going to be launching those giveaways starting, I think, probably the 1st of March. So I got to look at when that proposal is set to go through. And so we're building and going to be creating a lot of buzz and rolling out the marketing now. So that was what the roadmap is for this year, is to build up that liquidity, to build up that infrastructure, and get as many people excited about the project. And yes, for the retailers that need money right now and can't wait, they'll come in later. And so there's a lot of retailers that see us for what we're doing and they support what we do. And those are going to be the earliest ones. And honestly, those ones will be also the ones that are going to be the most widely rewarded for coming in early. It's like anything else. So definitely something we're very cognizant of and thinking about all the time.
Rewarded with an increase in the value of the TUSC they hold, or rewarded somehow through TUSC with additional coins? How will they be rewarded for being early adopters?
Oh, well, that could be one way. So for some of the early pilots so in our pilot program, we have an allocation of TUSC that we are giving to the early retailers to help compensate for their risk and coming with us in early. So we also have a merchant directory at TUSC.network, so we're giving them free marketing. We also, between the various players on our project and our socials, we do a promo outreach blast through our social media. So we have over 400,000 followers on the various accounts that we operate. So we're promoting those initial. So there's a lot of, I like to say I'm trying to build relationships out doing our outreach, but it's about, say, how can we help you with in-kind until we really get the volume going? And the volume will come. And I'm solid at that. We've been here 3 years. Even when we were a token before we launched our blockchain, we had weeks where we were getting $50,000 a day in trade volume. So to me, it's baby steps. Ultimately, we have to get the word out there about what we're doing. And now that we're just about ready to launch the payment gateways, we're now beginning the marketing. So I think that's just part of the process.
Yeah. Let me just jump in here for a second if I can. I think, Alex, you have a question?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know who's watching this, because I know some of this might be confusing for people, or it's confusing to me. So I'm going to assume, that it's confusing for all the folks out there as well. What we're trying to do is help people get a clearer picture of what's going on here, because that's really important. The thing that I just got out of what Rob is saying here is that the marketing aspect of it is incredibly important, right? It's probably job one in a situation like this. And so I think I understand why. Mark, Alex, do you guys understand why marketing would be job one, or do you question that? I'll start with Alex.
No, I think you're on the money. Bitcoin is scary to people who don't know anything about Bitcoin. Digital money. What do I have to do anything about that? Mm-hmm. My parents have made that argument multiple times whenever my brother tries to get them into mm-hmm. Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And, it's a fair argument from their perspective because they don't understand anything about it. And they're not going to pay attention either.
Right. And I saw there was a guy here. Sorry, we didn't get you, which we will if you're still here, if you have specific questions. But there was a guy who said that he lost his entire life savings, I guess, in Bitcoin, and he feels it's like a Ponzi scheme and stuff like that. So I know there's people out there who feel that way. As Mark said, there were scams in the beginning of that, and we had someone on before who said they got taken advantage of.
Let's make it clear he didn't lose his entire life savings because of Bitcoin. Now maybe he lost his wallet, or he
said because of an EMP. Let me correct. I went back and got a statement. He said, I lost my entire life savings in Bitcoin because of an EMP.
That's literally
doesn't make a lot of sense.
EMP? Well, I don't even understand what that means.
Yeah.
That's literally not possible if he's taken the proper protocols to back up his wallet. Mm-hmm. I mean, EMP doesn't destroy paper and pen as far as I know.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I find that pretty difficult to believe.
Yeah, if
it was done properly. Now, I mean, if he
right.
obviously had it stored on an electronic device and somehow it got EMP'd, that's on him. That isn't a Bitcoin problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking like an EMP in the sky. We're talking like a power surge or something. Is that what he's talking about?
I'm not sure. I'm basically putting his comment up there.
There hasn't been any EMPs going off in the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of. But if he wants to clarify that, we could definitely touch on it. I understand that there's people that have a lot of apprehension and there's a lot of things that could happen, right? People got conned and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
It's a new and scary technology to some people, and they don't understand it. And marketing will certainly help that. So I think you're on the right path with that idea. You're on the right path with the circularizing of the economy and being able to use TUSC for multiple things. Tell me a little bit about how the token value is derived.
Well, in our world, I look at it like all value is subjective. So the value is, determined currently by the 5 exchanges that we're on, and it will be further, valued as we get on more exchanges as we improve our liquidity. So the market determines the value of TUSC. I don't.
Okay.
The project, that's market driven.
Right. So potentially, though, you still have the same volatility as Bitcoin then.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
So, well, you made a point earlier about the volatility of Bitcoin and utilizing it, and then we're not. One of the problems I foresee is that, well, why would I want to use my TUSC if it's going to be as volatile as Bitcoin, and not something tethered not something architected in a way that similar to the Tether coin where it's tied to the U.S. dollar.
Right, which was my next question: why you didn't do a pegged version of this?
Well, let me ask. I'll address both. So, I was saying about the transaction fees are volatile in Bitcoin, not the value of Bitcoin. That's what I was referring to.
Okay.
I think ultimately one of the reasons Bitcoin and other cryptos are so volatile is because they're only speculated on. And so they're not really used for any kind of utility transaction purchases for the most part. I mean, there are some transactions, but for the most part, they're just speculation. And anytime you have something that is widely speculated on is the majority of what it is, you're going to have a lot more volatility than you will if something gets used. So we believe as we go forward and we start getting actually used, because we've architected a bunch of different things to help promote the use of it over the investment side of it. We believe that in time, as we hit some equilibrium in the future, I don't have a crystal ball on what that looks like, but we believe that it will naturally become less volatile over time as people use it. If it's only speculation driven, it'll always be a volatile asset. And same thing with Bitcoin. To answer the other question about why did we choose not to do a stable coin, there's a whole lot of reasons why. One, the U.S. dollar just got deflated to the tune of $10 trillion over the last 4 years with the last administration, and then probably double or triple that with the current administration. There's no way in hell that I would want my long-term project and the project we created to be pegged to, I believe, a very risky asset in the long term as the U.S. dollar. So there's no way in hell I would want to artificially peg the value to something like the dollar or any currency that's fiat driven anyway. But I think ultimately this touches on another thing is why would you want a stable coin? So if you look at the whole reason stable coins were created, I believe for the most part was based on a false assumption put out by some OG maximalists back in the day. And that assumption that I believe is faulty, and I'll tell you why I think it's faulty, is they believe that retailers won't adopt something because of the volatility of the value. And I can tell you, as someone who's talked to hundreds of retailers over the last 3 years, that is not the number one objection I hear. It's not. And if you look at the people that have really pushed stablecoins, by the way, which have some really dodgy stuff going on behind the scenes, especially with Tether and some of these others, I don't believe that is the biggest objection that retailers have. I believe people thought that because, for instance, Bitcoin was not successful at getting adoption as a currency. It became very successful as an investment. But if you look at the people that pushed the idea that volatility was the reason retailers didn't want to use it, I don't believe it's true, because that's not been my experience actually talking to gun retailers and other retailers out there. That's not the lead objection. So my thoughts are there's other issues with issuing a stable coin, and we're seeing that now with the latest recommendations coming out from governments that they only want governments or banks to issue stable coins. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. No. Did you guys hear me? I was pretty sure I muted it. No. Okay.
So besides, I don't believe artificially controlling the value of something. I think the market should determine what the value is. I don't like the idea of stablecoins being pegged to something like the dollar, which is declining in value. And if the dollar goes belly up, then it goes your stablecoin value too. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of legal issues surrounding the issuance and the governance of stablecoin products. And I think that area there's going to be a lot more control coming from regulators in that area in the future. And we just thought for those reasons, we decided not to go with the stablecoin.
Okay.
So you hit it a bunch of times there. What is the objection that you hear the most from retailers?
The main one, if we actually explain it to them, is how to deal with taxes. Okay. And a lot of people out there, that's one of the biggest objections when people realize the tax implications of dealing cryptocurrency. They don't really want to deal with that. And so one of the things that we're doing to overcome that is we're partnering with an organization to help figure that out and make it easier for retailers to incorporate that into accepting it. I used to own a retail store. I know what it's like to set up a point of sale and deal with a cash register and deal with stuff. And you want to make it as easy as possible for them to deal with it. The other thing is, I mean, it's not that the volatility question doesn't come up, but there is solutions. Like, for instance, you can atomic swap into stablecoins, and we do have stablecoin pairs. So it's like if someone really does want to go into a stablecoin for whatever reason, that's not a problem. And so there are options and ways to deal with that. But long term, I just don't want the project we're working on to be based on that.
Yeah,
sure.
Can I just jump in here for a second? First of all, my apologies. We're moving out of the studio here, and we're gonna be broadcasting out of the van. So Lola's packing up stuff. So that's what's going on. Lola
and you're
never
not going
rests.
down by the. You're going down by the.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. The other thing is, for everyone who's tuning in, Mark is not a husky version of Dr. Evil. Your hairless cat is distracting a lot of people, Mark.
Well, I apologize. My wife is on the run, and this is a kitten, and she's wanting some attention. So
No, I thought that was an obnoxious chihuahua.
No, it's totally cool. Do you want to show us real quick? This is actually pretty interesting. Just a little segue here there you go. So this is nice. So this is one of those Egyptian cats.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. He's very aggressive. I'm assuming it's a boy. No. Okay.
It's a girl.
You know the difference, right?
Well, okay. No, normally, I usually don't get that close enough to that to act. Okay, so there's a bunch of different questions. I don't know if Mark or Alex had a question, but I noticed a lot of people are asking about, like, why is this better than gold or this metal or that metal and different things that are out there. Look, this is like we're talking to folks that have been through things that would cause them to be more and more paranoid over time. Does this, for the guys who are into crypto, this probably seems like a ridiculous question, but what's the answer to that? No, it doesn't seem like a crazy question.
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay.
I think you'll find a lot of people hold a little of both. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that most people have a little bit of an exposure to different things, not just Bitcoin, but maybe some of the other coins as well as gold or silver or platinum, or for that matter, right now, bullets. I mean, if you bought 100,000 AR rounds 5 years ago, you're doing pretty good right now. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, that's the precious metals that I hold personally.
Now, I'm really kicking myself for not spending the whatever $10,000 on that 55-gallon drum from Barnauls of 5.56.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
That's worth a pretty penny right now. Go ahead.
Retirement.
Well, I think it's like this. There's a lot of people in the Bitcoin community that don't like precious metals, and they actually, and I think it's because they feel that they're competitive they want to usurp gold and precious metals. I think that's not the battle people in crypto should be fighting. I think that's kind of dumb, to be honest. But I think, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, And I'm a big believer in, hedging across different asset classes. So I think precious metals are a piece of that. We even have paper things like 401ks. I have guns, bullets, and I have crypto. And I think smart investors, diversify not only within a class, but across classes.
Yeah. There's a couple things. By the way, John Crump is also in the live chat. He knows a little bit about this as well. If you guys have questions out there, and I'm trying to pop up what he's saying. Someone was asking before, is there a limited amount of Bitcoin, or how much of this is going to be created? I don't know if you answered that already. Maybe we can come back.
How much Bitcoin or how much TUSC?
I'm sorry. Excuse me. How much TUSC? Yes.
So
correct.
This goes into strategy, and currently we don't have a cap. And so we do have a 5% inflation rate in the beginning, which will be turned down as transaction volume comes up. And a lot of people have a knee-jerk reaction. You don't have a cap on your supply. And I'm like, no, we don't. And that was intentional. Now, we may implement one in the future if it makes sense to and the community wants it. But one of the reasons why, and we've looked at this, remember, our mission is to get people to spend crypto. And so one of the problems with why Bitcoin and a lot of other cryptos that do have caps on their supply, people don't want to spend them, is because they're going up in value. But one of the biggest drivers of that is this artificially created scarcity within those projects. So for instance, you get more people wanting Bitcoin, and and over time, they slow down the rate of production. Every 4 years, there's a halving on how many Bitcoin are produced. But then over time, once Bitcoin gets to its 21 million, there's no more that are going to be created unless they do some kind of hard fork or something. That creates some other potential issues with paying the people operating the network, the miners. But what happens is that just that's basic supply and demand. And so when you have a deflationary asset like Bitcoin, which has a cap supply, it's just like, think about machine guns made before 1986. You have a cap supply, right? So over time, more people want them, and they just go up and up in value. That's why an M16 that's transferable is $35,000 or whatever it is now. But it's the same thing with Bitcoin. But the problem is, now you've deliberately created the conditions where it's going to go up in value as an investment, which has the opposite effect of what we want. Is we want the value to grow, of course, and I believe as when people will start using it, it will grow in value. But the idea is that as more people use it, you still have to pay the bills. You have to pay the people running the network. You have to pay for the charity fund. You have to pay for the marketing partner fund. You have to pay the workers and developers that work on it. And so our supply is not capped. It is controlled. But that's done intentionally because we don't want there to be this artificial scarcity that makes it into an investment asset, because we have thousands of investment assets out there in the crypto world now, and no one's spending them. And so one of the reasons why, and that's why they put all these artificial caps in, is to basically create this artificial scarcity so it goes up in value. And why most of the creators of these projects did that is because they want their own bags to go up in value.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things that we decided not to do. There's another thing we didn't do is we don't implement staking. And staking is a way where people can lock up their coins for a period of time and then get interest on it. Well, the minute you implement a staking pool, like a lot of people have asked us to do that, what ends up happening is you're incentivized people saving it and investing in it and not spending it. So we're deliberately trying to create the conditions, or at least not create conditions where people won't spend it.
Okay.
So of your roughly 46 billion available coins now, that's
right.
correct?
Correct.
How is the distribution among wallets? What is, who has what percentages? What are some of the, because I know you guys are the delegated proof of stake, right? So
right.
If you had someone that controlled 51%, they'd have, and once again, I'm a layperson when it comes to technical aspects of these things.
I don't think you are.
Correct me. So correct
he's
me.
He's also a gambler. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell anyone that, Mark. So yeah, he's schooled in the art of the bluff.
So anyway, how is it distributed? Like, obviously we know in Bitcoin there's whales, and look at different things, Glassnode, things like that, to see who's controlling what wallets have what percentages. So I'm interested as what's the distribution, and you don't have to be specific exactly, but I'd like an idea of what the distribution of your coins is.
I don't know. And here's where it gets complicated. We started as an ETH token, and then we did a manual swap a year and a half ago when we launched the new blockchain. So we had 5,000 wallet holders at that time. Only about 10% of them swapped the coins. So the coins that did not swap got put and reverted to the reserve fund. Right now, there's about 15% to 18% between the marketing partner fund and the reserve fund, and I can't touch those. Well, I can touch the marketing partner funds because I'm the acting marketing partner, but there's only about 1.5% or 1.2% in that account. That's all public. We don't hide any of this. Most of the coins got defaulted back to the blockchain, and so those can only be accessed via the community vote and on the proposal process. We have another block explorer that's being built right now that does have what we call a rich list, so you can see the top coin holders. I don't know of any one that has more than a couple percentage points of the supply in any particular wallet. I do know that a couple of the original co-founders lost their keys. They're not even involved anymore. So there's not like, and I guess since we're a 3-year-old project, there's been a lot of swapping and moving around. I don't know who has what. I know about, probably I can identify about 6 accounts. I know myself, between my wife and I, we have right now about 6% of the supply is what I personally can control.
Okay.
And I'm probably the largest holder, to be honest, I'm guessing, based on that, because we've bought a lot over the last 3 years ourselves. But there's no person that I'm aware of that holds more than a couple percentage points.
Interesting.
Of the supply.
And then I have a follow-up to that. With the current market cap, it being, once again, rough and 1.4 million, something like that. Is that correct?
Sounds about right.
Something like that?
It sounds about right.
What is the, that's, at this point, that is not a inordinate, I mean, that market cap is relatively small, I think, when you compare it. Yeah. I mean, 8,000 coins, you guys are probably around 11 or 1,200 in market cap. So it's not, there's some that are much, much less than you for certain. And obviously, is there a concern? Are there protocols in place? This is the technical side of it, to keep someone from coming in. Obviously not now necessarily, unless they were doing it slowly, but to come in and, if you came in and bought $1 million worth of this, obviously the price would rise, so it would cost more. But right now, it's the market cap's so small, you could possibly have someone that could come in and try to get not necessarily completely controlling interest, but a big enough voting interest that they could certainly sway decisions and allocations and things like that.
I mean, like game stopping them or something like that, or?
I think
it's
he's
a rudimentary way of putting it, but
yeah, okay.
So Hank, and you understand that, and right now in a delegated proof of stake blockchain like TUSC, we vote on things. That's how decisions are made about the network. So there's a voting mechanism just for proposals and block producers and things like that. So one of the concerns about a delegated proof of stake blockchain is that there's cartels that are created, meaning groups of people act and coordinate. And what he's saying is, what would stop someone from buying up a lot of coins and then wielding inordinate power based on the voting power? A short answer is it doesn't really work very well when they try that. So I don't know if you followed TRX or Tron when they bought Steam. The whole community forked and left it. And left them in the dust when they tried to do a hostile takeover. And it was so widely rejected what they tried to do in that process that, one, I don't think there's an advantage to someone doing that. So for one, you might be able to take over power if you wanted to spend, $500,000 and buy a lot of TUSC. I mean, you're more than welcome to do that. But there's probably not a lot to be gained by doing that, because especially at this point in our development, if you went and did that, you'd probably get everybody quit. Everybody just stop. They go fork and do something else. And so I think that we have a good example of that's already been tried, and it didn't work very well. And in fact, Hive was the fork that, after Justin Sun tried to do a hostile takeover of Steam, they created Hive, and Hive is now a bigger blockchain than Steam was. So I think ultimately that would probably be a good warning signs for someone who would want to do that. That being said, we're a small community right now, and like I said, we're just starting to do our marketing, so we're just really starting to grow. We're pretty tight knit. I mean, we go in there and we talk about these issues, and so far it hasn't been a problem. But I think that the people that I know and the people in the community that have been with us for 3 years, we are trying to do something to solve a problem. We are very mission focused on solving this payments issue in the gun industry and providing that service. And most of the people in the community are very dedicated to that. So, I can't say that I can just stop people from buying it on an exchange. But I just don't think that would be very fruitful if they did it.
No, yeah. I agree. I was just wondering if you, obviously I knew you had thought about it. I just wanted to get your answer of why you thought it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm. So Alex,
I appreciate it.
Alex, looking at this from your point of view, what you do in the gun world, right? 3D printing and stuff like that. What are you thinking about this whole thing? I'm really curious to know how this susses out in your brain, or if you're not thinking about it, if you're not worried about it at all.
It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting project. I think I don't know I don't really know what to think about it, because I don't like to speculate on until I don't like to speculate, basically. Like, it's funny. A friend of mine, Matt Larosier, goes on camera. He does an interview. It says, "You absolutely can never 3D print an AK receiver," and then the week later we released the Plastikov. Yeah. And I'd like to publicly give him crap for that, whatever I can.
We had Matt on, by the way.
Yeah, I caught it. It was a good show. But I don't like to speculate. I think it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting proposal. It does address the circular economy that Bitcoin isn't creating in a different way that I haven't really seen executed before. So I don't know. It's a good idea. I hope it takes off. I don't know.
What is it that would make you, someone like yourself, pay attention to this? What would you be waiting for to happen in this space before you took it seriously? Before you're like, okay, this might be a thing.
Really, I mean, so I adopted Bitcoin in my personal store because of the market utility of the number of people who already had it and were already using it for, holding or trading or whatever they were doing with it. So that's why I adopted Bitcoin. And I think that's what it's going to take for most people to come on board of TUSC is user adoption. So, and Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency I currently accept. And the other reason that I started accepting was because a service like BTC Pay Server existed. So it was something that was quick and easy for me to set up. It didn't cost me a lot of time and energy to figure out, and it did exactly what I needed to do and nothing else. It enabled me to accept Bitcoin payments in the store, and then set up additional portals for developer donations so people could give Bitcoin directly to them. Just one to the other. So yeah, that it did exactly what I needed, and that was it. I've been asked for people have asked me to say, hey, can you take Monero or some other coin? And I've been like, not really, because 99% of the people who ask me about Bitcoin don't actually hold any Bitcoin currently. They heard about Bitcoin. Oh, you accept Bitcoin. Tell me about Bitcoin. And so, if I get a mass of people, asking me about TUSC, it would be something that I looked at for adoption for the store for my personal stuff. So I don't know. That's sort of where we're at. Is I don't have people asking about it, so I don't have
a gauge, so to speak.
The overhead. Yeah, a gauge to say, okay, it's worth spending the time to figure out how to do the payment processing and the portal setup, and then all the back end stuff of like, how do I cash this out? Because I can't take TUSC to just like I can't take Bitcoin to the grocery store and buy a gallon of milk.
What do you guys? And I don't know if Rob has a question there, but Mark and yourself do it. I'm sure you also, Rob, have Bitcoin, right?
I believe it or not, I own more value in Bitcoin than I actually do in TUSC.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So you guys answer this question. Do you spend Bitcoin at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Mark said no. Rob said no. So you do spend it.
Yeah.
Right, Alex? Okay.
Yep. We had a vendor for a while in our community who only accepted Bitcoin for the little clock rails that we do.
Spooky rails?
Yeah, spooky rails. So I spend Bitcoin with that. There are a number of other vendors that I've spent Bitcoin with. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have Bitcoin and then hold on to it.
I resist trading Bitcoin for cash. I will trade Bitcoin for goods or services. So
Okay.
if I have a surplus of Bitcoin right now that I will just sit on until I need it.
Okay. Because the thing that I'm thinking here is, I think that brings back the point of what Rob is always saying, that we need something that we're actually going to use, right? So then what's the things in the way? Like, one, I know you said you want to see a whole bunch of people adopting that or using that. Then it's going to make it worth your time to actually get set up for that.
That's literally probably the only thing in the way from my perspective. If I was a business owner or a store owner, my primary concern would be enough adoption so that the volume was high enough that I didn't have to suffer any volatility. And I know he says that the tax concern is the biggest thing, but I think going forward, we've figured out, the accountants are up on it. You have to, on your 1040, you got to say, yeah, I've got Bitcoin or crypto and list it and these things.
Right. You and I have been in the space long enough, though. I think a retailer who's brand new to crypto, that's probably their number one concern, because they've heard it on the news 1,000 times about Bitcoin and taxes.
Yeah, well, the taxes, it's one thing if you're an individual too, right? And maybe you're not going to put all your transactions in account for your basis and things like that. Okay, not that I think anybody here wouldn't pay all the lawful taxes they owe.
Tax evasion, never.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and so
no one does that.
But I think ultimately, though, with on the retail side, where they have to really kind of care about it, it is a little more complicated for that. But I agree. I mean, I'm not, believe it or not, I'm like the worst sales guy for this, because I don't pitch it, I don't hype it, from the standpoint of it's going to go up in value. Do I think it's going to go up in value? I absolutely think it's going to.
I think you're a good
adoption.
I think you're a good Here's my thing. I think you're a good sales guy because you're a nerd about this stuff. Now, in the gun world, in the gun space, saying someone's a nerd is a bad thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing to you, but for me personally, I want you to be that, right? Like, everyone's asking you a bunch of different questions, and you're answering those questions. That's the thing. I think in the gun world, we see a lot of folks talking about stuff that they really don't know about. So things, and this is what makes everyone apprehensive in the gun space, I think, right? So not necessarily talking about guns, but services that we use. So if someone's coming on board and they have a platform, let's say, and it's going to replace YouTube or Facebook, and we're talking to them, where I always feel like I'm just talking to a guy who didn't really create this thing. He basically is just like smooth enough to get big box gun companies or something on board and maybe put money into it, but doesn't understand the technical back end of how this service actually works. So for you, that's like reassuring, I think, that you're talking to someone, they can answer these questions. It helps you understand it, if that makes any sense.
Sure. I mean, I like to be as factual as I can, and I'm not a developer, though I'm pretty technical. I know a lot of technical stuff, and I've worked very closely with our team to implement what we have, and we got a lot of, big things we want to implement long term if we're successful, and I think we're going to be. And part of the reason is, we have no debt, we have no overhead, we have no burn rate, we have basically a working product. We just need some payment gateways, and those are being worked on now. And we have money in the bank, so to speak. So once we get more liquid, we can just pile that back into development and marketing. And we're going to. And now we've just been rolling out the marketing. I think you came on 6 weeks ago, probably.
Beginning of January, I would say.
Yeah. And so we're just rolling it out now, essentially, to the public. And so we certainly are early, no doubt about that. But we're building something that, I hope will be here in 50 years, and so if you understand, if we were a startup, I mean, we got the makings of really good fundamentals for a normal startup, but we're not normal because we're not a company. And I think that's one of the things that's hard for a lot of people to grasp. What is a decentralized project when there is no CEO, there is no owner? And I like to say that we're kind of like a nonprofit. essentially, and that's really what we are. We're a protocol. And so we've created a payment rail that we want people to use, because I believe going forward, it's going to be essential and necessary given the political climate in this country. We've been dealing with Operation Choke Point since 2012. We're going to be dealing with Operation Choke Point probably going forward into a more, I would say, a higher extreme. And in the beginning, there's the people that come in the beginning and accept it and work with us and are interested and supportive. They're going to be pioneers. And there's always more risk for the people in the beginning. But ultimately, I'm accessible. I've been here for 3 years. I've been in my Telegram group every day. You look at my Twitter feed, I'm not shy. I'm the guy that we're always there. And, if you want someone from Team Bitcoin to come to your shop or talk to you on the phone and walk you through the process, set up Bitcoin, good luck. Find a phone number. Let me know how that works.
Yeah.
It's not, and there's a difference.
Mark, you have a question? Go ahead.
Well, I just really kind of have a comment. I agree with everything he's saying. And I'm sure some of the pushback he gets is, you don't do anything different than this one or that one or X. And like he said when we first started this isn't a conversation about why he's better than Bitcoin. That's been beat to death. What he just said is exactly correct. You have someone that you can go and talk to. And like you said, try to do that with Bitcoin. And the thing that would go in the positive column for me on this project is the payment gateway, right? So they have to establish that before they can get the onboarding of the retailers and before they can and they have to make it as simple as possible for them to do that and to make it simple for customers to onboard their fiat or their other cryptos into TUSC so that then they can then use it to transact. All of that I think is fantastic. I do think we need something that intercedes and comes in between the Bank of Americas and the Visas and the MasterCards. I think that's all noble if they can get the volume. And I really think that that's the big hurdle that they've got to get over. And if they can get over that, then I completely agree. I think it's what I've heard so far. I think it's fantastic.
What I'm trying to figure out is the steps. So I understand that we're in the marketing step, right? So what's the next phase after marketing is probably what I would want to know there. And then how do you know that you've gotten to the phase where marketing has worked? Is it what Alex is saying when everyone starts adopting it and then guys like Alex are coming to you going, hey, we need to figure out how to get this on? Where exactly is that thing where you make the next step?
So there's a lot of chicken and egg right now. So we have the marketing piece, right, which is important because that's going to get the word out. That's going to get the initial people that are interested in helping improve the volume. Here's the thing, to get into some of those other on and off ramps, which Mark was just mentioning. So we're talking to one of the major Bitcoin ATM networks in the country. So one of the things that we would like to get to the point, and we will, is be integrated in that Bitcoin network. I'm not going to say who it is, but again, that's a volume thing. And the same thing with getting on American fiat exchanges. Now, again, these are those on and off ramps that make it easier for a retailer to cash in and cash out of Bitcoin. We have to get our volume up to improve that. So initially, we have to help stimulate some of the trade volume. So some of those bigger partners that will get us to that next level will accept us. But to that end, we are already laying those groundwork, and we have those relationships already being built with some of the major crypto exchanges that are based in the United States. Some of those crypto ATM networks, for instance. So the question is when? And I don't have a great timeline on that. So I think things can move very fast in crypto. I've been in this space for a while. And I think once things start slipping, they're going to slip quick and they're going to move fast. I think, like I said, we are stacking up a list we have about 15 retailers right now, including some pretty big brands that, and you, Hank, and I don't know if I told you about the one, but I'll just say that there's some big brands that we're talking to right now that are looking at supporting the project. And I think depending on when that happens, I think things are going to move very quickly. I'd like to say that probably my goals would be probably by the end of second quarter that we're integrated at least one or two fiat US-based exchanges. We'll have all our payment gateways probably built at least for the top three major e-commerce platforms for their plugins, the payment gateways. And I think that should happen. And so I'm pretty comfortable saying that I think by the end of late spring, we'll be on track. And so, but there's just so many of these chicken and egg things that have to happen first. And that's where it gets a little complicated. So it's like you make a little move, then the next moves get a little bigger and bigger, and then just is how things. The good thing is, coming on a show like this, working with you, working with the other influencers that we're working with, and we're going to get more of those influencers. And I can tell you, even the little bit of volume that we've had over the last couple of weeks is coming from your show. Honestly, Hank, I've fielded at least 3 calls in the last week from retailers based on people that heard you talking about it. Okay. And so
when the real gun guys get on board, it'll be like someone opened the floodgates then, because
and so I think the strategy is we're doing a lot of business development behind the scenes. We're talking to a lot of the major players. In fact, that's one of the things I use with my own podcast is I interview those players, which is a great business development tool and networking tool. So we are developing the relationships. So when we're ready, we already got those relationships ready to go, and it's just going to push us forward. And so the good thing is, like I said, I'm patient. I'm not going anywhere. We don't have to. We're not worried about it. We don't have the concerns and constraints that maybe another startup would, saying they have this, a huge payroll they're trying to meet and they're going to go out of business. We just don't have that. So we can last as long as we need to, and we're going to keep trucking away like we have for the last 3 years. Okay.
So one of the things I think would be a heat, I don't know, like a heat moment or something like that, right? On the radar. Is something happening in the news? So Alex, I don't know if that's the same kind of thing that you've seen in the 3D printing world, and I am trying to make sure we spin this back in the direction of what you do at CTRL+PEW. Did you see something happen where all of a sudden 3D printing took off? Was it related to politics? Was it related to how everyone got interested in guns sometime last year?
I think 3D printing is pretty actively suppressed. We've heard from a lot of people who they aren't allowed to run stories on it. I do know Popular Front did a podcast or did a documentary, a mini doc a while ago. They met up with one of our foreign developers, and I don't know, it generated a lot of interest. We've seen a lot of new people come on board. And a lot of additional pressure from media agencies trying to get a one line about why we're evil. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks.
Okay, so you're saying that there's traditional news media outlets out there that want to do stories on you, but have been directed not to do stories. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
or the higher ups are. Okay.
We've been approached by a few, and then the stories were shut down because they were directed by their management to not run the story or not investigate the story anymore. And then the ones that do actually run the stories are outfits like The Trace, which are really just well-funded hit groups and not actual media agencies or journalists. So, I mean, it's the usual thing you expect from being in the gun industry in the first place.
So do you think that the 3D printing world then has hit that heat point yet, or you don't even feel like it's even there yet then?
I feel like it's really been just a series of smaller of larger and larger hills that we're climbing over. We had 20,000 people on our Keybase team. We got kicked off of Keybase because we were too popular. They didn't want to be associated with us. We were by far the largest team on their platform, and they kicked us off. So we ran our own, and several thousand of those users came over and are still with us here. So we're growing rapidly, and I don't know, you can't stop the signal. It's here. We're gonna continue to climb over all of the hills in front of us.
So I mean, this is how I've seen other things in life take off.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
little by little and then all at once.
Well, I mean, and not just that, but for example, I grew up in hip hop, and I remember that the more that the establishment came down on hip hop, the more it grew. And it was very I remember the early days of that, growing up in that and looking at my friends that were doing things and all that. And, For example, I went to school with a friend of mine. Actually signed. He was one of the first people that Puffy signed a deal to, or maybe I think Puffy signed that deal through someone else, maybe Andre Harrell. But Puffy controlled that deal, and his name was Father MC. And to my mind, in the late '80s, he took off because all of a sudden he was on Arsenio Hall, and I saw the music videos everywhere and all this kind of stuff, and but back then he just didn't go anywhere. But as hip hop kept growing, people kept coming down on it, making laws around it, and you had all the negative articles and things like that going out there, and then NWA and all that. It just kept building to the point today where it's like it's actually one of the most viable forms of music that people are doing, and they kind of pushed it in that direction by telling everyone, "Oh, this is terrible." So I feel like, aren't we seeing the same thing with guns? For a long time, the media, stuff like that, saying, "Oh, these guns are terrible, guns are terrible, guns are terrible." And then all of a sudden last year, we saw something that we didn't even see back in 2013, right? Things started happening, and everyone in America started going, "Yeah, I'm buying a gun."
Yeah, everybody suddenly questioned whether or not their government could actually provide for their individual safety.
Right.
And it's a question that should have never been asked in the first place. The answer is always no. You have to do that yourself. And any number of court cases have seen, have seen rulings come down where the police don't have to protect you, and that's fundamentally true because they're 20 minutes down the road. It's the situations that arise where you need a firearm to defend yourself. It's I need this in the next 20 seconds. Whereas, the police response time, whatever emergency service you need, 20 minutes. Yeah. So, and people saw that hit home. They saw COVID close police stations and lots of civic unrest. And, they asked that question and answered it deep down for themselves and then went and bought a gun. So I feel like maybe not the media telling everyone that guns are bad, but rather they looked at the world and used a little bit of common sense and said, "Oh, things are not pleasant or peachy, and not always, it's not always sunny. So maybe I should look after myself for a little bit."
Yeah, and I think tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but I feel like we're seeing that same thing happen with cryptocurrency. That there's folks out there saying, the media is saying, "Oh, this cryptocurrency is a bad thing," right? The government doesn't like the idea of it. People are hearing about that. And even though people are into gold and things like that, also people are into the internet and buying and selling things online, right? And where they don't necessarily see the person that they're trading with. And as much as people are saying that and you have the bad stories out there, it brings attention. And I feel like that same thing is happening to 3D printing from where I'm sitting at. You're sitting in a completely, you're on the front lines, but from where I'm sitting at, I feel 3D printing is getting more and more attention because there's more and more government agencies and news media, people saying, "This is a bad thing. We got to stop this. We have to do something about this." And that's making people go, wait a second. 3D printing? Maybe I need to get one of those 3D printers. And it's a lot like what you see happening in the world of folks just going into a gun store and saying, "I heard about these AR-15s. I just want to buy one."
Right.
So I don't know, Mark, Rob, you guys tell me, is this a crazy comparison I'm making?
Well, I think, I don't mean to step on you, Alex, but I think there's a lot of corollaries, is that the government is definitely pushing back on any attempts to decentralize, and in other words, give options that are outside the government purview. So government's all about gaining, maintaining, and taking more control. That's just kind of what governments do. And I think decentralized technologies, like whether it's cryptocurrency or 3D printing guns, that those things basically empower people to be more self-sufficient and not need or maybe even defend themselves against government. So government,
even decentralizing your own security. Like for a long time, most people just relied on the cops, and now we don't rely on the cops all of a sudden. Yeah.
And I think, so I think ultimately the government is going to fight back any way that it can. But that's just what I think that's expected. That's what government does. It's protecting itself. It's protecting the legacy system.
Yeah, go, Alex. Did you want to say something here?
I would say we get, if we we can dive real deep down philosophy on this road and get into like what sovereignty is and who is, I guess, where power naturally resides, because for a lot of the time we've seen in the last 40 years, a lot of people, individuals, cede whatever, all of their power and control to government authority, government institutions, your national healthcare systems, your what is the FDIC, your banking insurance. So, things like that. Whereas, with Bitcoin, with cryptocurrency, you say, no, I don't need banking insurance. I'm my own banking insurance. I'm my own bank. And, once you come to that, you realize you don't need the government protections. You start to question more and more about what the actual role of the government needs to be. And I'm not trying to like espouse anarchy here. I just think our government is too large and overreaching. And when they're deciding how many of which types of bathroom my business needs to have, we've gone too far.
3. You need 3.
Right.
Yeah. Mark?
Well, let me just say that I agree with everything Alex just said. However, I'm going to be ostracized after this little spiel I'm going to go on.
Uh-oh.
Because the problem is, and this is a variation of, do you want to be right or do you want to make money, right? So they talk about that a lot when you're, let's just take poker. Everybody kind of knows poker. They watched it on TV, right? Well, 2 aces are supposed to win, and how dare you call me with a 7 deuce and, all this stuff. Well, do you want to be right? Yes, technically aces is, you shouldn't be in there with a 7 deuce. If the guy beats you and makes the money, which side of that bet do you want to be on? The guy bitching and moaning and complaining with the 2 aces who's bust, or the guy with the 7 deuce that's got all the money? Same thing applies here. I've been an advocate, and people are gonna go crazy when I say this, but I've been an advocate for playing the system when it comes to the firearms industry. I think as an industry and a group, we should have gone and gotten more regulation, but written it ourselves to benefit us. Why do you think JP Morgan gets away with murder with everything they do? Why do you think Santander can launder money for all these drug cartels and nobody ever goes to jail? Yes, there's tons of banking regulations, but guess who wrote them? Guess who's in charge of the enforcement? The big banks are. We should be playing the same game that they're playing. The time of lower and smaller government is gone. And anybody that thinks it isn't paying attention. They're not going to cede their power. You're going to have to take it. And we can go down that rabbit hole. But I think one way you can take some of the power back is to get the legislation to swing your way. Why not go before them and write some suppressor legislation? Yes, we don't need more laws in the books, and we've got, enough laws in the books to fill the Empire State Building and no one can ever read it. Okay, you want to be right or do you want the money? And that's what it comes down to for me. If we had to write a few more regulations that made it available to go and buy suppressors right off the shelf, why don't we do that? Oh, we give them an inch, they take a mile, the government. You're just fighting a losing battle. And I think that translates over into this cryptocurrency. I don't think they're going to ban it. What they're going to do is heavily regulate it. You've already seen that. You've got the KYC, which is the Know Your Customer laws that you have to comply with when you buy from any American exchange. You put your fiat in to buy, you got to give them your Social Security number. You got to give them some sort of federal identification, state driver's license, passport, something like that in a digital form. Then they go do that for the anti-money laundering. You've already seen that come in. Listen, the government's not going to cede their place as the world currency, right? The dollar is not going to give up. We have a navy. Bitcoin doesn't have a navy, right? So a lot of the Bitcoin maximalists would completely disagree with me. Well, I believe they're going to end up being shown wrong because there are some things going on with Bitcoin that are against the best interests.
Can you buy enough mercenaries with Bitcoin to overthrow a government?
It's not about that necessarily. What it's about is end around regulation. So Bitcoin effectively gives other state actors such as Iran and China and some of these other places, and yes, it's a very small amount. I think, Iran has about 4% or so of the hash power necessary to mine Bitcoin. That's not very much. They can't take over the network. But what it does allow them to do is an end around the sanctions, because they can do all of the Bitcoin they want and trade it for US dollars that they can't get any other way. So I'm not saying it's only used for criminal purposes. I'm a huge believer in Bitcoin, have been for years, own some of it. It's not that. But you have to realize that the government's going to look through it through the lens of what's best for them, and they're going to put regulation on this. They already have.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying here, and for people who don't know, Mark and I have argued about this. Like, you guys will not believe the drop down, knock down, drag out, whatever, however you say it. I don't even know what the right saying is. We've gotten so deep into these arguments that both of our wives are like, "What the hell is wrong with you people?" Right? So I'm not necessarily trying to get all deep into that, but you're saying if you can't beat them, join them, kind of a thing, right? Am I right or wrong?
What do you think? What do you think the J.P. Morgan, not just the bank now? What do you think he did? What do you think the Rockefellers did? They all did it.
For
do you
sure.
Want it right, or do you want to have the end result? Because sometimes they're the same, but most times they're not, and it's just that simple.
I think that worked for those guys. I mean, this is how they controlled, like, what form of fuel we use for cars, right? And they made it beneficial for themselves. I get all of that. But I think what most people are thinking out there, because I know I am, is how can you trust, even let's say we went to Republicans and we're like, okay, go ahead, let's make some rules. Most of them are going to benefit us. I mean, I don't know. I cannot tell you that I have any faith that those rules are going to benefit me. It's probably going to benefit those Republicans or those Democrats who agree to it or people in government, but I don't really see how it's going to benefit me. And I think that's when the masses are looking at this. They think, hey, we're so far past this, they're not going to think about, let's cede back some power to these guys. I don't know what Alex or Rob think about that.
Sorry,
I think that.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say I really like his, paisley shirt.
Oh, okay.
That's my comment.
Yeah, Alex, go for it.
He was going off about how J.P. Morgan gets away with murder, and I recalled hearing a story about J.P. Morgan funding a plot to overthrow the U.S. government in like the 30s. Mm-hmm. Did anybody? Am I crazy?
Isn't
the business plot or something?
Isn't that the creature from Jekyll Island? Wasn't that what that was all about?
I don't know. I remember hearing the story, and I can't like I haven't bothered.
I'm pretty sure we just saw corporations have a heavy hand in elections here in America. I mean, I don't know who would deny. I don't know if Mark would deny that. We just saw them take control of that.
Oh, the article that came out in Time Magazine last Friday is a perfect example. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. If you've looked at it, if you haven't, you should definitely take a look at the article.
Yeah.
The shadow campaign to.
I don't necessarily know if it was a shadow campaign, but they obviously had a concerted effort to prop up their beliefs in what was going on and create a narrative. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I'll just go back to what you said. You don't see how it would help you in any way, and maybe it wouldn't. But my argument is what you've been doing for the last 20 years hadn't done anything for you either. You're in the same boat now. So maybe, just maybe, you could try a different approach to this.
You mean like not voting, like not giving money to the NRA?
Yes, exactly. And
I'm already there. I already don't give them.
Yeah, but that's just a small step, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I don't want to get all the, I'm an NRA instructor and a lifetime member, so, spare me all the emails about, the NRA. I know all about it, believe me. Right. But it's not just necessarily that. I mean, it goes much deeper. It is if you can't beat them, join them. And it's obvious we can't beat them. The best we can do is hold them at the wall.
Right.
And eventually you're not going to be able to do that either. You're going to have to revise a strategy. I mean, that's why the NRA had the ILA, right? To go in and try to exert pressure on policy. Right. And I think that when you look at, why do you think that Twitter and Google and all of these companies that none of us like, we were talking about, all of us being on the banned list and going to, banned.com or whatever. Well, why do you think they're able to do the things that they're able to do? Because they helped craft the legislation through their arms that are at the government, their lobbying divisions and lobbying arms. K Street, that's exactly why they're able to do it. And I'm just suggesting that maybe we should be thinking about doing the same. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
And that comes to the Bitcoin thing too, or the cryptocurrencies in general. This illusion that you can own Bitcoin and just be your own bank and separate yourself is ludicrous, because in order to get out of it and back into fiat, you have to go through the exchange process. Now, as of right now, yes, there are ATMs. I can send some Bitcoin over to a Bitcoin ATM and get some cash for it. Mm-hmm. Well, if it's over a certain dollar amount, they make you put your driver's license in and scan it. So that's number one. And the fees are ridiculous. I mean, you're losing 10, 12, 15% sometimes, depending upon which network you use. So I guess technically you can be your own bank if you're willing to pay such a heavy price to do it. I don't think that's a smart idea, personally.
I guess my point is I don't want to go out of Bitcoin. Like, I would, if I could go to the grocery store and buy, insert whatever cryptocurrency you like, with that would be the ideal. Like, that would completely sort of detach me from the banking system, to facilitate that transaction. And then that company could theoretically go do whatever they needed with whatever coin that was. So the circular economy with any cryptocurrency is a huge problem. And the closest people to it are Bitcoin, but again, the transaction fees are ridiculous, and I still can't go buy groceries or pay my bills or do anything else. So it's a problem, and the investor crowd is not helping facilitate that. But to your point, if you can't beat them, join them. What do we do?
Yeah. Like
because the government inherently, like, as anytime you see more government power, you see a sort of demonization of gun ownership across the board. You see it every time there's any incident that, like, NATO gets involved in internationally. It's okay, well, whatever, one of you can't have guns anymore, and the other one is the government. So we see that same trend going everywhere that you see a greater government power getting involved. So if the government inherently is against the people owning firearms, what do we do to combat that? How do we join them?
Well, that's the same thing. I mean, I'll go back to my banking example. So the same thing. Look at all of the banking regulations that are on the books, and look at all the extra ones that they put on after the GFC in 2008, 2009, all the Dodd-Frank and all of those things. Regulation after regulation after regulation. Yet the banks are making more money today with all that extra regulation that's supposed to control them and be hard for them to put up with, because they control it. My suggestion is to come up with a plan, which I don't have. Obviously, if I had the answer, I'd be on K Street, making $1 million a day lobbying. What I'm saying is, as a community, and I mean a decentralization community, right? It seems weird for me to want to be part of the decentralization community, yet talk about expanding government regulation. But my point is, if you can get the regulation in that's friendly to you, and have it worded in such a way, like the banks do, like big oil does, like why do you think there's so many EV credits right now? Why do you think these guys get this $7,500 a car EV credit?
The thing, my thing I would say about this, and by the way, you guys don't have to be nice to Mark because he's my buddy. Okay, Mark.
Please don't be.
Listen, I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah, please don't be.
Yeah, but here's my thing, Mark, that I would say about it, the way I see this. We're past the point of no return when it comes to the firearm side of this. And the reason why I say that is because, to me, there doesn't seem like there's anyone in government, whether it's on the left or on the right, that's interested in putting in friendly laws. We're past that. If you go back 4 years ago, Republicans had a supermajority in America. They could have passed those laws. Regardless of what the Democrats said, they could have said, okay, we're going to do this, and they could have made it look like, hey, we're doing, we're putting in a little bit of controls on this thing here, but now everyone, you can have, 50 state CCW, or, suppressors come off the NFA or whatever. They could have done what you're saying. And what they said was, oh no, we'll just push this down to the midterms, or we'll do this later, or whatever. So that indicates to me that they're not really trying to put anything friendly forward on our side.
Huh? I can explain it.
What do you think the reason for that is?
Money. The banks have all the money to pay them to get the regulation, but the gun community doesn't want to come together as a cohesive. We want to fight over which, who's better, the NRA or this other organization or that organization, or, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. We have
GOA's better.
Yeah, but do we have enough? Do the people in the gun community have enough? Because basically what you're saying then is we have to bribe the politicians.
Legally, just like the banks, just like big oil, just like everything else. They get everything we want. We get nothing. They've laid a roadmap out in front of us. We're too busy backfighting. Do you think Exxon and Chevron?
I know for a fact that on the other side, those folks are bribing the politicians. But it seems to me like they have more money than we do personally who's talking here, right? Maybe if you put the whole firearms industry together, what's the billion? What's the number on the firearms industry? I don't know if Alex or Rob have any clue of what the firearms industry is making.
Upwards to 50 billion a year if you include everything around it. So my understanding,
50 billion. Okay.
It's about 5 billion for all the guns and ammo, and then when you get into all the accessories and camo, it can get up to 50 billion. That's I think what the NSSF says.
Okay.
So 1/10 of Exxon.
Right. I mean,
split across several thousand companies.
Right. What's tech making? What are the tech guys doing? I mean, they're
trillions.
Yeah. I mean, they're just burning $50 billion.
Here's the thing, Mark, and I've been a political activist, and I've been pretty effective in my past. Even ran for Congress at one point, 10 years ago. So I do understand the political process. But I think the problem is for instance, the Libertarian Party will tell you there's no constituency for freedom and liberty, because there's a reason why libertarians don't really get much money, and it's because the libertarians don't want to do the bribery. They're not going to give you something in exchange for that. Right. And so I think the problem is, if you're saying, I want to free you, give me money to go lobby for freedom, I mean, that doesn't work. And I think I understand what you're saying about trying to be pragmatic and play within the system, but how we're doing it is simple as this, and this is how I don't think it's going to be effective unless you have the bags that tech does. We don't have the bags that matter to them. Mm-hmm. We just can't afford to bribe them with the levels of money these people are getting kickbacks. It's insane.
Wait. Can I interject something real quickly there? We don't have to compete with, Google isn't necessarily directly lobbying for firearms laws. It's the organizations that they give a little bit of money to. And I believe collectively as a firearms organization, we can raise enough money to fight the dedicated anti-gun lobbying and lobbyists. I'm not suggesting that we can even remotely compete with Google and Twitter and tech, but they're not directly doing that.
I think NRA was trying to do that, and then NRA gave up on bribing the politicians and just went to, let's just take this money for ourselves and have a good old time and watch everything burn. I
think most people don't. Look, I've talked to a lot of NRA guys, and I'm not a super big fan of the NRA. But if you talk to a lot of these, especially the older guys that are NRA guys, they think the NRA is doing that. They think they are fighting for us, and they're, fighting the good fight on Capitol Hill.
If you believe the dozen emails you get a day, then there you are.
Exactly.
Oh my God, those things are so annoying.
But Mark, one of the things that we're doing with TUSC is, and it's kind of the strategy in rolling out with what we're doing, is we've taken the Amazon approach. Like, I'm old enough to remember when Amazon was still a bookstore, and it was a bookstore for, 5 years. And what we say is, one, we're laser focusing our energies in an industry that has a recognized problem. Okay, let's start there. Most companies in the world, in the West, don't have a problem with payments that crypto solves. So that's one of the big problems, is crypto doesn't solve a problem for people. In fact, it creates more problems for a lot of people. And then, the fact is a lot of the crypto projects aren't marketing and holding the hand of retailers and incentivizing. So we're focused on working in an industry with a recognized problem that we do solve a problem for them. But what we want to do is that also laser focusing in one industry. I don't know any other crypto that's really doing that. And the idea is long-term is you get enough retailers on board, you're going to get some distributors on board. And you get enough distributors on board, you get the manufacturers on board. And the idea is we do want to create that internal industry ecosystem where you don't have to exit to fiat to conduct business. And that is the long-term strategy. And so as far as roadmaps, Hank, one of the things that I'd like to see is to start seeing that the retailers don't have to sell TUSC, go to cash. but they can say, hey, I'm going to go to RSR Group, or I'm going to go to Crow Shooting or Lipsy's or what have you, and go buy my supplies now. And that ultimately is the goal. And if you're trying to just, if you're in a crypto project and you just want to I'm going to do this patch store, or I'm going to focus on them in this coffee store here, you're never going to be able to get that, that kind of critical mass in one place. And that is one of the things that we're focusing on. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's not going to happen unless you start, unless you try. And that is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Control+PEW, I think you wanted to get in here on some things, or you wanted to get at Mark, whichever one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, individual arms, owning your own firearms, making your own firearms, being your own bank, actually owning your own money. These are all things that the whole decentralization idea is sort of the antithesis of government. So any decentralization, anything, I don't think is ever going to get a seat at that let's write our own regulation table. Like we're never going to have the centralized authority that, JP Morgan, US Bank have to be able to put all the money in one place and say, you legislators are going to write this. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's ever going to happen when you're dealing with this many collected individuals.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be subject to more and more regulation until we finally and collectively reach our tipping point and sort of toss the whole thing up. So I don't know. It's a weird position for someone in the decentralization space to have. I don't think I've ever heard it before, but I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out in the long run.
I mean, I understand the concept of it. I just feel like it's too late. I feel like if it was a long time ago, we could have maybe done something like that. But right now, we're at the point where they've decided what the enemies are, right? And I think they've decided that guns, for one, are the enemy. I mean, we can argue about that if we want to. But they've decided, we don't. And it's not that they've decided they're giving up guns. They've decided that we don't want regular people to have guns. We're going to take those guns away from regular people. They don't need it. We're going to secure them when we feel like they need to be secure. We'll take charge of that. I don't think there's any middle ground there where they're going to go, let's make some rules and then everyone's going to live by this, right? Because we've actually already done that in American history. And I think when it comes to the other things, they're there as well. Like, if the one way that we can win is if we start siphoning off the economy that they're living off of, that's making all of these guys wealthier, right? So if you decentralize that and you start having more control over that, this is a place where you can bleed them dry, and they don't want that to happen.
They're not going to allow that. They just showed you in the Robinhood game stop. They're going to stop you. They're going to bail themselves out. They're going to get on the phone.
Then people in America have to, then what listen, that's true. Cannot argue that. That's true. Ultimately, people in America have to get to a point where they had enough. That's the problem. See, if we're getting hit as gun guys, no one worries about that. But if you notice the way that everyone paid attention to that story of GameStop, is that's a thing everyone pays attention to, right? That's something everyone goes, hold on a second, wait a second. You can't actually buy a stock and go long the stock now? The government or the few people, individuals behind that could come in and go, yes, we could short the stock and kill it all we want to. But when someone decides to buy that stock and go long, then we're going to take those guys down. People have to get mad about that. Then collectively, if we have enough people getting mad about all the things that are happening in America or around the world, then maybe there's going to be that revolution. It's not what I want, but maybe then there'll be that revolution where people get sick and tired of it and realize the one place that the people outnumber the government is by the numbers of the people. And if the people actually got upset enough, is good going to come out of that? I don't know. But, I mean, when a forest burns down, it's a bad thing and a good thing. right?
I think, yeah, but
Yep.
I don't know. I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks about whether or not that's even a possibility.
Yeah. Control
I
Q
mean,
said, and now we're all on the list.
Yeah, now we're all on the list.
Nobody likes. I don't care. I've been on lists.
Yeah.
Right?
I know nobody likes to think, oh, they're my cold dead hands. They want my guns. Come and get them and all this stuff. Well, bullshit. The vast majority of people that think that, when that SWAT team either kicks in or knocks on your door to come get your shit, and your wife and your 4-year-old are standing next to you, you're going to get in a gunfight? No, you're going to lay your guns down. They're going to go get them. And then you're going to maybe try to fight them in court and go through the regulations. We just had this incident that happened in the Capitol. When they're showing up to arrest those people, are there gunfights going on? No. Those people are putting their hands behind their back and getting perp walked. So I have a hard time believing in this narrative of the great readout, and we're all going to pick up arms, and I just see zero evidence of any substantial in history of that happening. There's 1 or 2 sheriffs that are saying we're not going to enforce the laws, so there are some fringe examples of some minor support for that, but a general overall support, I just don't see it.
I don't feel like what happened in the Capitol was actually anywhere related to our circle of group of people and what we believe. This is my understanding. There might have been a couple of people in there that were pro-Trumpers, whatever, but that's nowhere close. I just don't think that was that. And I think if it was guys in our realm, right, guys who were training and doing things and knew knew what they were up to and what they were doing, we would have a completely different government right now. Okay, so and if they try to go after those guys, there'll be a completely different result from that.
But let's say you're right. Let's say they weren't within the circle, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll buy into that for the sake of this conversation. It just proves my point even more, because all they've done is say it's the guys in that circle. Mm-hmm. So they've turned it so it's a lose-lose situation, and I just don't think people get how powerful these people are. And this isn't. I mean, I get 50, 60, 70 years ago, this would have been a different story altogether, right? I totally get that. But I also think that the living conditions, I think one of the things that's different when people want to talk about, well, the French Revolution and the Revolutionary War, and things are so, in a relative space, good relative to how things
No one wants to give up their awesome right now.
That's right.
No one wants to do that. I would agree with that. We're all sitting around looking at each other like, who's going to start the revolution? And once it starts and I see it going on for real, then I might consider maybe having a conversation with my wife about whether or not I might perhaps load up and drive down. I'm with you on that. We haven't reached the boiling point. That's the problem. We haven't reached the point. Look, I'll tell you something, and this may help for people who are thinking this out there. I asked my dad one time, because my dad was like, when I was a kid, he played chess with the prime minister of our country, right? He was supposed to be in charge of building up the infrastructure of Guyana, all that kind of stuff. He did that when I was a kid. I went to his projects where they were building stuff. And I was like, Dad, why did we leave Guyana and never go back? And he said, even though I was in that position, I only had 1 pair of shoes. And one day that 1 pair of shoes like wore out. And when I went to the store to look at a pair, what it would cost me to get a pair of shoes and compare that to what I was actually making, I realized that it would take me a massive chunk of my salary to replace those pair of shoes. This is what happens when you live in a socialist government. That's what Guyana was. And this is what told him, okay, I have to get the hell out now. It doesn't matter that I have like cars and I've got a good job and all this kind of stuff, because ultimately, if I want something outside of what they decide to give me, it's going to take most of what I have, right? But we don't have that problem, because we're living in America and you could get a good pair of shoes from Walmart, right? For $5. So we're just not there. But he was there, and this made him give up the country that he was born in and take his wife and his children and leave that country and go to a completely different place that he wasn't used to and go through all of those kinds of things. Are we going through that? I mean, are we anywhere near to that in America? I doubt it.
Look, I think we're on the road, right? We're on the road. We're driving in that general direction. I don't know how much longer we've got on the road until we're there, but all empires fail. including ours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to think that to think it's going to go on forever is a fool's errand in the first place. You know, the British Empire failed. It's now just Britain, over there on a little island. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if the British. I don't know.
I'm inevitably on that road.
Yeah, I'm not trying to counteract what you said, because I think you made a really good point. I don't know if the British Empire failed. I feel like the British Empire realized that they took all the wealth out of, or not all of the wealth out of America, but a lot of wealth out of America and other places. And then they were like, you know what? Let's just back off now, because if we keep going down this path, now we have to support those people. And that's why they voluntarily stepped back. If you noticed in Europe, even though England is part of like the whole European Union, right, and they're going through the Brexit thing right now, they still have their own currency. If you look at the wealth that they have, the stuff they took out of India, Africa, and even America, you know, the royalty over there is actually still pretty wealthy. Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't know that they fell. I think that a long time ago they were like, oh yeah, let's just back off and see what happens
they walked
here.
Up to the precipice,
and
looked a little further into the future and said, okay, we're going to, let's not, you know, let's choose a different road, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a strange and dramatic time. It feels like, you know, looking back historically, and stories of my grandparents and parents would tell me about, you know, Vietnam. It feels like a very similar kind of time where there's a lot of division between governmental authority and the general person on the street. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's strange.
It feels like to me, I'll let you get this. It feels like to me, they're trying to make a one world kind of situation go on. This is what it feels like to me. There's certain people out there. I don't know if you want to say it's Illuminati or whatever. The people who have the most have decided, let's put this all in a one world bucket, and then we could step back from this and let whatever happens, and we'll be okay. That's how it feels to me. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I just kind of wanted to circle back to and kind of keep it on with the decentralization, because obviously the two guests here, that's the central focus, I think, of having them on. And I guess my question for both of them...
Well, you started this whole thing, by the way. just FYI. Okay, go ahead.
I guess my question to them on the decentralization thing is, yeah, I agree. Maybe we don't have the money. We don't have the will to come together as a group, so it's not worth doing. What I do know is what we've been doing essentially since 1913, and for sure... since 1973, 74, somewhere in there, it just isn't working, right? You're right, Alexander. We are going down the road. The question for me that becomes important is I don't have, my life is only a certain time period. So what concerns me is that of my life and my kids and my grandkids, right? If I start thinking out too far past that, to generations, hundreds of years, I mean, who has any idea what's going to happen? I'm only worried about what I can focus on today. So to bring it back around to decentralization is, I'm not advocating against the decentralization. I think what we need is legislation that allows us to be decentralized, where we can come up with a compromise, which is why the Know Your Customer, why the anti-money laundering. We need legislation that's going to allow us to remain decentralized and have the circular thing with TUSC, where you're buying from the customer's buying from the retailer, who's buying from the wholesaler, who's buying from the manufacturer, who's buying from the raw materials guy, and so on and so forth. But in order to stay there, I believe we have to get legislation written, which is why a lot of people like Wyoming, there's doing a lot of legislation out in Wyoming with the banking sector for crypto and things like that, so that we have some control over what we have to give up versus what we don't have to give up. Because I think one thing people think is, well, you can't stop Bitcoin, it's decentralized. Well, okay, that's probably true. You can't stop it as long as there's power in a computer, somewhere and running the hash rate and things like that. Maybe you can't stop it. But I'll tell you what you can do if you're the government. The same thing they did to, say, online poker or Silk Road or some of these other things. They can stop the on and off ramps that allow you to move in and out of the decentralization. They can stop your landlord and say, if you deal in Bitcoin, you're going to jail. They can do those things, just like they told the banks. You can't let people put money in and out of these online gambling sites and so on and so forth. So what did those people do? They went and got legislation that was friendly to them. So now they have online gambling in a ton of states. It's regulated. So I think having some regulation and decentralization is a foreign concept to most people, but I don't think they think far enough down the path of how powerful the people are. Because just like Hank said, if we take money out of their pockets, they're not going to allow that for too long. That's one way to get at them. But if we have some regulation that's friendly to decentralization, which I know sounds crazy, every time I say it, I think I'm nuts. But I can't find anyone that can tell me how it works when the government can shut it down. I mean, they shut it down in lots of places, right? And until you can pay your rent in Bitcoin, we have to have on-roads and off-ramps, on-ramps and off-ramps, and they can shut that down. So what do we do about that? And I think that'll be all I say tonight.
Okay, who wants to go for this? Do you want to go, Rob? Yeah.
I can opine. Well, the fact is the government has actually already voiced their opinions on the regulation on all sorts of things. So, for instance, the SEC and the IRS and FinCEN have all put out multiple guidances on how to address and deal with cryptocurrency. And so they have put out a lot of regulations that actually, they fall within the general framework of their existing purview of financial matters and tax matters. So I think that's already happened to much extent. They're basically saying, if you follow these general guidelines, you're not going to have a problem. And one of the things that we did when we launched TUSC is that we didn't sell coins and tokens to do a fundraiser and things like that. And so we did that intentionally because we didn't want to be an illegal security under U.S. law, because that would be a definite obstacle to getting on, listed on American exchanges. So, I mean, we thought about those things and did comply with the law as much as we could. I think ultimately at this point, the government has, played their card in their hand on how they're going to handle most cryptocurrencies.
How would you say? What would you say that hand is? Just because, I mean, I might, there might be some of us who don't fully understand what their position is at this point.
Well, there's a lot of aspects to crypto and blockchain in general. So there's a lot of different areas of the law where there's a nexus with government regulation. So on the securities, now that might be with the issuance. The IRS deals with the taxes. And they've all opined on how you should be conducting yourself in those areas. So, there's a lot of governance and laws, and as Mark said, in Wyoming, they've created a lot of, I would say, banker crypto laws, because they're not for decentralization. And I know some of those politicians up there personally, because I used to live in Wyoming and hang out with those guys. But ultimately, the Wyoming laws are about making Wyoming friendly to crypto banks. So they're trying to make Wyoming like a new Delaware for crypto banks. I don't believe the laws in Wyoming actually support decentralization whatsoever. But that being said, they have created a framework up there for crypto to be used lawfully and regulated in that way. And I think that's already been done for the most part.
And just one quick question to you from Paulie Walnut. Paulie says, is TUSC trading anywhere yet? If so, where?
We are currently traded on 5 exchanges. The biggest one is Probit. We are not on any US-based exchanges yet. We are working on it, but you can go to TUSC.network, and there's a list there of the exchanges in our trading pairs. Okay,
all right, cool. So, Alex, you probably have some thoughts on this. I'll let you get that out.
I have a lot of thoughts. I'm not sure which one came first.
Pick it, man. Just go for the one foremost in your mind.
I don't think that any government, any legislator, any government organization would sign on to anything that openly supported decentralization of power. Because decentralization, in my opinion, is the very opposite of government. So you come to decentralizing money, like Rob said, the banking laws, they aren't supporting decentralization. They're actually supporting collecting all of that money there. When you get to the banking regulation that's been passed, it was all about centralizing money in the hands of the banks and the government. And so you see, how does that apply to firearms? Well, firearms are an individual purpose. They're an individual utility. Like, I can use that, but we collectively cannot. Or we can't use one. We can use, our own individual. So it's an individual entity, and it is, a decentralized thing. It's up to the individual to use it as they see fit. So I think the government, as we go along, our government will be more and more opposed to firearms in any form in the entire industry. So I don't know that things are going to necessarily get better in our near future as far as, gun regulations go and financial regulations and just general the idea of decentralizing yourself. So it's if we want to see that happen, the people we elect need to have that, forthright in their minds, and then they need to not get whacked by, the CIA or something. So I don't know. It's a strange time to live.
I agree with you. It's going to be tough for this particular section of what we're doing. I think what Mark is saying, might work and may make more sense in other sectors, especially ones that are in early development and these guys don't understand where it's going yet, right? But I think when it comes to cryptocurrency, especially one that's specifically designed to keep the firearms industry going, the folks out there who already allowed rules and regulations that make Operation Choke Point exist are not going to go, oh yes, okay, if you guys do this, everything's all good. They're not going to do that, right? Because they're the ones that want to squeeze people, the regular people, out from being able to buy guns. That this is just what they want to do, right? They just want to make this more difficult. They don't want to make it easier. And I think it's the same exact thing with 3D printed guns. Maybe if we were like 10 years ago or something, you're like, hey, people don't really realize we could make guns out of these 3D printers. Let's do this. It's too late for that. They already know what could be done with the 3D printers, and they don't want to allow that or for people to have easy access for that. They're already trying to figure. We could already see it creeping into bills that are out there, right?
Yeah.
We already
every
see.
day.
Yeah. Huh? Go ahead, Mark.
So
I thought you were done, but okay. No, I'm just kidding.
Too. But my question is, so what are you going to do about it? So if you're telling me, well, we can't get our own legislation passed and they're going to legislate and it's just going to get worse, what's the plan? All I want to know is what's the plan?
The first thing I'm going to do is when they start doing those, when they get to that point, I'm not going to comply with whatever they do.
Well, they're already to that point.
When
for years, you can't have a machine gun. You got to go through hoops and stuff to get a suppressor.
And we've complied with all that. I think I'm at the point where I'm not complying with anything past that. And then, like we said already, everyone is looking around like, okay, are you guys gonna fight about any of this, or what's gonna happen? I feel like it's gonna come down probably to states. There's gonna be certain states that maybe we can get a better handle on the states and what they do, and they may be more friendly to what we're talking about, or some of us, but at some point we're going to come to that heat moment in America. And I don't know who's going to win. No one knows who's going to win. Whenever that happens, if you've ever lived in a country that's gone on there like a coup or any kind of revolution, like, I'm not talking about read about it. I'm talking about living there, right? No one knows what's going to happen, what's going to come out of that. But unfortunately, that's a point that we're heading to in America. I know that's kind of sad, and it's like a loss of control over everything, but...
Well, I think when it comes to, like, say, more gun regulation, I think that the government is not going to do the conservative fantasy of just blocking off streets and then a bunch of military comes out and then go door to door. They're not going to do that. They know that would be the fastest way to kick off a revolution. They're not that stupid. They're just going to make things illegal, and then when you randomly get pulled over speeding and the nice patrolman in any state finds that you got an illegal bump stock, he's going to take you to jail and you're going to get charged with federal crimes. Or it'll be like that, your ex-girlfriend or ex-wife calls the cops on you because she's mad at you, and all of a sudden, oh, by the way, not only does he's a gun guy, he's also got this illegal, suppressor he made from some solvent trap
so
somewhere.
get rid of the revolutionaries one at a time on their own is what you're saying.
Yes, and well, that's what they're going to do. It's just going to be an act of attrition, right? That's how they're going to get people, and there's not a law enforcement agent in the country that's going to risk his pension and his job to let you go, some rando stranger on the side of the road, because all of a sudden he's had an epiphany and a change of heart about enforcing laws. That's never going to happen, right? And they see it all the time because they have arrested people over bump stocks already and things. And so ultimately, I think
they've arrested people over the pistol braces. Sorry, that's what's come out with the ATF. Which, by the way, John Crump, just as a quick aside, John Crump says he's got more document leaks from the ATF. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think Mark is right, that I don't believe that most armchair conservative, FUD gun guys are going to revolt. I think ultimately most 99% of people will do exactly what they're told. And part of the thing is especially 2A guys, which tend to be conservative, are law abiding. Right? I mean, and they want to believe in America and apple pie, and they were raised to respect law enforcement. And a lot of them love law enforcement. They have those, thin blue line flags all over their house next to their Trump flags. Those guys are not going to revolt. They'll be pissed. They'll gripe. They're the same guys that are on Facebook groups bitching about the price of ammo and price gougers. But
if that's the case, then we're in checkmate. Then we're in checkmate.
No,
isn't that the end game here? If we're not going to revolt. And then also they realize that we're not going to revolt and they could pick us off one at a time, and then enough people go, yeah, I don't want to get separated from my family, then we're at stalemate or checkmate at some kind of...
I think there's a line for a lot of people, and I don't know what that is for me, and I don't know what it is for you. I do think that still having weapons and proliferation in the populace still is a really good hedge. I hope we never need them. But if you ever study revolutions, and I actually like to read history books. I love to read about the Finnish War, or maybe the Bush War in Zimbabwe, or even more interesting, the Irish Revolution. I used to live in Ireland, so I love Irish history. And if you read those revolutions and those little wars, you'll quickly understand the problems that they have when people don't have access to weapons. And ultimately, I believe, and this is why I've been following, Alex for, I don't know, a long time now, actually. And I was in the Keybase groups, and I just lurk, but I'm learning. And ultimately, I believe that what they're doing is God's work, because I believe that that's maintaining this subtle balance of power. The politicians do know that they can go so far, but there's still a line. They know that there is a line that they won't cross while people are so heavily armed. And I believe that that's why we got to keep doing what we're doing. We got to keep the signal going. We got to amplify that. We got to come up with decentralized. And look, I'll be honest. If TUSC fails, right? If TUSC failed, but yet I was able to reach people and at least instill in their mind the concept of decentralization. And even if TUSC failed and they heard me somewhere and they went and started using Bitcoin, I'd still see that as a big win. And so to me, it's about amplifying that message and getting that out there so people can decentralize themselves. And I think it's just going to take time. But to say that we're at a stalemate, maybe a stalemate. But you know what? I like it when there's gridlock in Congress. I like it when they do nothing, personally, because it only gets worse when they do something. It never gets better.
The optimal state of government is doing nothing.
Right.
Exactly. and so ultimately, I understand where Mark's coming from, and I tend to agree with his point of view. But on the other hand, I've been to other countries in the world that were a war zone. Trust me, even when I lived in Ireland in the 90s, Northern Ireland in the 90s was a police state. Right. Literally, I got pulled over by, British military checking my papers in the middle of the road by a column of British soldiers. And I was very young at that point, but that's the first time I had experienced being in an actual police state. And I can tell you it was a very humbling experience for me. And so I can tell you that we need guns out there, and we need that signal. We need to teach people how to make homemade ammunition and homemade guns. And because it's just this like It's sandbags, man. It's supplies. And you know what? I love the idea of proliferation in the hands of a lawful, mighty country. And honestly, on the other hand of it, it also still, regardless of what people want to say, it's a big freaking deterrent to being invaded by commies. We're the most well-armed civilian population on the planet. They don't want to come after us. But I also don't think it's going to be this, I think the way they're doing it is they're not going to try a Ruby Ridge anymore. They're not going to try a Waco anymore. I mean, they've already learned that they will not fare well that way. Not only
we proved that with the Nevada BLM stuff. Yes, they're not going to do that. They are going to back down, and then they'll be back later when everybody's dispersed, and they'll get them one at a time.
And so ultimately, my take is this: we just got to get freedom in the hands of people, and ultimately I do think it does keep them at bay, knowing that that's out there.
Yeah I think that was very well put. A good place to end it. This is one of the reasons why I'm trying to have you on and have CTRL+PEW on, and there's folks out there fighting for like Second Amendment, sanctuary states, all that kind of stuff, while we're trying to have guys like Matt LaRosiere that we spoke about earlier on more and more. I think these are the little places that we could do some little paper cuts on big government that's out there. Okay, listen, we're over the 9 o'clock hour. Okay, I'm sure Mark can think of some more things to get everyone riled up. I'm sure he has a list right now. And that's exactly, trust me, I know him. This guy right now has more ammo than I do. Okay? So, and probably guns and stuff like that. So just
both literally and figuratively.
Right. So let me wrap this up. I'm going to start with Alex of CTRL+PEW. How can the folks out there find out more about you if they want to know more about 3D guns and stuff like that? Where do they go?
Primarily CTRL+PEW.com. That's my website. I'll post updates about what's going on in the community, new file releases, and what have you. At CTRL+PEW everywhere on social media at the moment. I don't think I got banned recently. Time will tell. If you want to support the community, shop.CTRL+PEW.com and donate.CTRL+PEW.com. You can get merch, swag, and whatever, and donate directly to developers to help them with their projects.
Awesome. Yes. And I would say to anyone out there that's heavy into the 3D printing thing, you want to come on, talk about these kind of things, you're welcome to do it. We need to make sure we get the message that CTRL+PEW is putting out there as much as we possibly can. So share that stuff when you see it out there. Let me go to Mark. Mark, if the folks out there want to fight with you or find out more about hairless cats or whatever, how can they do that?
At hankstrange.com.
No. Oh, you're not giving up any info, huh? You're just going to drop bombs?
I mean, I don't have any info.
Oh, okay.
Everything I do is with hankstrange.com. Seriously.
Here's what. Yeah, I'm going to do more stuff with Mark, probably even on the car channel, and you'll see even some bigger fights over there for anyone who's interested in that. We'll get into that over there. Okay, so Rob of TUSC, Rob McNeely, how can the folks support TUSC or find out more about TUSC for that matter?
One, I just want to reiterate, check out CTRL+PEW. I can tell you I've learned so much in the last year following these guys, but I would also say that the amount of research and development that's going on with their groups and used to be the key-based groups and things like that in firearms, they're pushing science. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the ECM of the barrels and the other stuff that they're doing, they're pushing R&D in a way that is incredibly innovative. And the beauty of it, which I didn't hear him say, is that they're doing it with cheap stuff. They're deliberately being able to help the average person build firearms with the cheapest products possible. And that's one of the things that I think is really clever and very innovative about what they're doing. So I'm just throwing that out there. I really love what you guys are doing. As far as what we're doing, if people are interested, you can check me out anywhere on social media. It's just my name, Rob McNeely, and that's on every kind of social media platform. And if you want to learn more about TUSC, we do have a Discord, we do have a Telegram, and our Twitter is TUSC Network on Twitter, and it's just TUSC.network is our URL. So TUSC.network.
Okay, awesome. And let me just do this before we get out of here. I'm going to run in the end, and I'm going to come back. Shout outs to everyone who's out there. I appreciate you guys. Tomorrow, we actually have Eric Pratt from GOA on the show. So that's going down tomorrow. You might want to make sure you tune in for that. Should be a great, fun show. Thanks to everyone for joining us here. This was awesome, amazing. I enjoyed the conversation. If you want to find out more about 3D printing stuff, I know that Alex does a lot of stuff with my friends at We Like Shooting. Sean is pretty much obsessed with 3D printing these days, so you can check that out as well, right?
Yeah, my number one fan.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I know, I was on the show. All right, stay right there, everyone. I'm going to run in the end, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, thanks for watching the show here. We're going to pull out the audio of this and throw it up on iTunes and all the other places that you get your audio podcasts from. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, share the message. Who wants the final word? Who wants the final word here? Yeah. Come on.
Rob, take it away.
Oh, I just want to say, make sure you listen to the Hank Strange podcast. But I really do appreciate you guys having me on tonight. And like I said, folks, it's all about, do you want the government controlling your money, or do you want a group of people that believes in what you believe and have the same values and supports the Second Amendment? Do you want them to create a money where you know what the rules are, it's governed by code that anybody can look at? And if you're interested in 3D printing guns, go talk to CTRL+PEW, because they got some really cool stuff going on.
Absolutely. We appreciate what you're doing as well, Rob, with TUSC. I think it's very timely and necessary. So I hope folks at least take the time to dig more into this. I appreciate everyone coming on. We're out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you guys with Eric Pratt of GOA. It's going to be a fun show. We're out. Peace.